Hi, I'm Selena if you're new and if you're not new, and today I'm going to be talking about the books that I should have loved but didn't for some reason. I saw Elliot Brooks do this, and then she turned this into a tag where other booktubers can talk about the books that they should have loved but didn't, and the books that they should not love but do, and tag her in it, and just we can all talk about our answers. And so I wanted to participate in that, and so I'm going to be doing a video talking about the books that I should have loved but did not love. That's this video. And then the next video I post is going to be the books that I love despite them not fitting my reading taste at all. But today is the negativity, so let's just get started. So these are the books that, based off of my reading taste and what I would have thought I would like, these books seemed like the kind of books that I would like, and they turned out not to be. And so let's get into that. I'm going to start with a recent example, and I also happen to know that this is a book that Elliot Brooks herself really likes. So, oops. But I read this book recently, and I didn't love it. And that book is Love and Gelato by Jenna Evans Welch. This is a YA romantic contemporary about a girl who is sent to live with her mother's friend in Italy after her mother passes away. And so this girl, our main character, whose name I cannot remember for the life of me, has to go live in Italy with, these people she's never met before today. And while she's there, she gets a hold of her mother's diary and learns about her mother's experiences in Italy at her age, and then she also has her own experiences in Italy. I really liked the first half of this book. I thought that the romance was cute. I really liked how there was more to this book than just the romance. I liked how it was set in Italy. I liked how we were exploring the main character's relationship with the people she just met, who she's living with, and I really liked how we got a grieving protagonist. I really liked how this book started out with all of those things, but I didn't love the direction that the book took after that. I'm gonna link my Goodreads review, which has very specific spoilery details, but I just was not thrilled with the angle that this took, I guess. I don't want to get into too much detail, but I didn't love how there was kind of a recurring theme of like creepy guys, and some of them you knew were creepy and some of them were like not really portrayed this way in the narrative despite their actions being really weird to me, and I just don't have a lot of patience for that. And then this book also had some pretty bad tropes that I hate, specifically the like really shallow mean girl trope. Like, yeah, I hate that trope. This book had that. I can usually overlook a lot of these little things. It was just that everything sort of built up with this book. We also have, in my opinion, a pretty bad case of insta-love with this book, and so there was just a lot of reasons why I wasn't super into this book, but I should have loved it because I loved the Italy setting and I love books that deal with grief. This was perfect for me. I don't love romantic contemporaries, but I do like when there's more to a romance than just the romance. I like that. And this book had a lot of themes that I really like to see explored. It's just I didn't like how this book did it. Speaking of how I should have liked a book because of the exploration of grief in it, then I should have really liked Pet Sematary by Stephen King. This was my first ever King novel. I think I had the wrong expectations going in, but I still think I should have loved this just based on my reading taste. I love books that center grief. I really do like horror. I like a good bit of the horror that I've read, but Stephen King, Pet Sematary, it just didn't work for me very well. I didn't think it was that scary, although I do think it is quite suspenseful. The pacing did not work for me. I think that it really took a lot of the suspense out of it, whereas like a lot of people, that doesn't happen for them. They love how slow and how suspenseful it is. I don't think the exploration of grief was bad, but it didn't really help me connect to this story anymore. And so I gave it 3 stars. I thought it was okay, but it's not my favorite King, and it kind of should be. The next pick for books that I should have loved but did not is actually a series, and that series is the Wayward Children series. This is 4 of the books. One of them is Outward Facing. I gave it 5 stars. I loved Down Among the Sticks and Bones, which is the second in the series, and so that one does not apply here. That one I loved. However, when I read Every Heart a Doorway, I really was expecting to love it because I just only heard good things about this series. I'd heard that it got so much done in such a short amount of time. I just expected to love the characters and love the world, and I just did not. I didn't think that there was that much content that I found interesting in this book. I liked some of the characters, but I wasn't connected to most of the characters. I didn't love the plot of the book. I didn't think that the settings were enough to keep me going with this book. I just really didn't like this first book. I gave it 3 stars. It was all right, but I expected to love this book and I did not. Moving on, I loved book 2 and I really enjoyed book 3. And at this point, I should have expected things to be hit or miss, but of course I didn't. And the next 2 were also pretty hit or miss. Book 4 I gave 2 stars and book 5 I gave 3.5. So I enjoy the series, but I think as a whole, talking about the series as a whole, I expected to love it. I love portal fantasy. I love kids going to other worlds. I love found family. I love diverse casts. I love that this series is pitched with as a home for kids who've been to other worlds. I love that concept. I should have loved those books and I did not. The next book that I should have loved but did not is Mansfield Park by Jane Austen. This really just boils down to how much I love Jane Austen's work. I love the rest of her works. I've read 5 of her main novels, including this one. I have not read Northanger Abbey yet, but all the other books I've either given 4, 4.5, or 5 stars, and I still need to reread one of them to make sure my rating is still at a 4-star. But I give these books very high ratings. 2 of my favorite books of all time, Emma and Pride and Prejudice, are Jane Austen books. I just expected to love this book because I love all the other Jane Austen books so much. That wasn't really the case with Mansfield Park. I gave it a 3-star on the Austen scale. I really still love Jane Austen's writing style and I did like things about Mansfield Park, but it really just comes down to the fact that Mansfield Park has a very typical Austen plot and characters, etc. It has a lot of Austen traits. It's just that I feel like they're not done as well in Mansfield Park. They're done better in things like Emma or Pride and Prejudice or something like that. Mansfield Park had the makings of books that I love, but it just, to me, it didn't execute those things as well as some of Jane Austen's other books. Next, I'm going to bring up 2 books, both by the same author, and they are Call It What You Want and A Heart So Fierce and Broken by Brigid Kemmerer. So the first books that I read by Brigid Kemmerer were some hard-hitting contemporaries, Letters to the Lost and More Than We Can Tell. I loved them. They're companion books that deal with hard topics, and I love a contemporary that can do that. And so I expected Call It What You Want to be the same. It's another Brigid Kemmerer book. I was expecting to love it just like I loved Letters to the Lost and More Than We Can Tell. And it was good. Objectively, Call It What You Want is a good book. It's a solid book. There's nothing really wrong with it. I just didn't connect with it as much as I did with Letters to the Lost and More Than We Can Tell. And so I gave it 3.5 stars because I didn't hate reading it. It's just that it was very average to me, whereas Letters to the Lost and More Than We Can Tell were above average. Similarly, I gave Brigid Kemmerer's fantasy a try with A Curse of Dark and Lonely and I loved it. I gave it 5 stars and then I carried on with the sequel, A Heart So Fierce and Broken, and I gave this 3.5 stars. It's a similar situation with Call It What You Want. Brigid Kemmerer does this thing where she likes to switch the protagonists of her stories even in series. Letters to the Lost and More Than We Can Tell both follow 2 different protagonists. There's 2 people that are protagonists and have perspectives in both of those books, but they're different people, and that really worked for me. I had no problem going from the Letters to the Lost protagonists to the More Than We Can Tell protagonists, but I didn't love going from the protagonists of A Curse of Dark and Lonely to the perspectives in this book. I just didn't get as attached with them. I didn't care about their story as much. It didn't have the same vibe as A Curse of Dark and Lonely, and so I didn't love it, even though I expect to love Brigid Kemmerer's books because I've loved so many of them. Speaking of an author that I've given books of theirs 5 stars before but not loved some of their other books, I want to bring up China Miéville really quickly. I read The City in the City last year and I loved it. I gave it 5 stars. I thought it blew my mind. I thought it was amazing. So later in the year, I tried to read Embassytown by him, and I was expecting to have the same mind-blowing feeling that I had when I read The City in the City. China Miéville always comes up with really unique and interesting ideas, and in The City in the City it worked for me, and he really just throws you into the story with no help, and with City in the City I eventually caught on, and once I did it was amazing. Embassytown does that stuff too. It's just that I never caught on and I never got invested in the story, and I really had a hard time knowing what was going on. It was very I don't know, obscure. It just, he was never clear about anything. I feel like the whole book he was saying something when he meant something completely different. And I was like, how am I supposed to enjoy this? How am I supposed to know this? Okay, on to some more books that I should love due to my reading taste. We're gonna go into some classics. So the first classic that I want to bring up is Tess of the D'Urbervilles by Thomas Hardy. I originally gave this book 4 stars when I finished it, but I've since bumped it down to 3 stars because I think that really encompasses my more mixed feelings. Because the whole book, I'd heard such good things about it. I was reading it in class and people in my class were loving it. I'd heard such good things and I wanted to love it too. And so I was trying to read it and I was trying to get into it, but Thomas Hardy's writing style is so hard to get into. And while I think that his plot and his characters, mostly his character Tess, is a really great character, his writing just dragged the whole thing down for me. And I love a tragic classic. Tess of the D'Urbervilles is very tragic. It is very shocking and surprising. It's just more brutal than you're expecting. And I really enjoy classics that are like that. But with this one, I don't know, I just didn't like it. I didn't like Thomas Hardy's writing style. It felt very removed, and I think at some points that was really beneficial for the story, and I think at other points it wasn't. I really appreciate what he tried to do with Tess of the D'Urbervilles. He was really pushing the envelope for the Victorian era, which I also love, but Tess just didn't work for me. And then the other classic I should have loved that I actually did give 4 stars because I do think it's objectively great, and I think I would have enjoyed it much more if I'd consumed it in a different medium, but I didn't. I was expecting to love this book. I was expecting it to be one of my new favorite classics. So many people who read this book say it's one of their favorite classics of all time or their favorite book of all time, and I just wanted to love it as much as them. And while I did enjoy it, I didn't love it like that, and that book is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. I did enjoy The Picture of Dorian Gray, but I think it's again a writing style thing. Oscar Wilde has very stylized prose in my opinion, and it was a little bit difficult for me to get into and difficult for me to follow. And so I think if I had used an audiobook or if I'd taken my time with it a little bit more or something of that sort, or wasn't so distracted, then I could have enjoyed it to a fuller extent, but that wasn't the case, and so I didn't enjoy it as much as I could have. But I again, it has certain elements that I do love in a classic. I love a dark classic. I love a gothic, creepy novel. I love short gothic novellas like The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde and Frankenstein. I love those, and Picture of Dorian Gray has very similar vibes to them, but it didn't connect with me like those did, which is really an unpopular opinion with gothic literature. And then the final book I'm going to talk about is a fantasy, and that is The Lies of Locke, Lamora by Scott Lynch. I'm sorry, I should have loved this book. A lot of people who have similar reading taste to me love this book. It's one of their favorite books, one of their favorite series, etc. However, I just didn't love it. To me, the plot was overly complicated and involved in a way that didn't feel smart to me. It just felt overly complicated, and I think part of that's the point, but also it didn't sell me on our crew and how smart and amazing they were. And then this is a very character-driven novel, and everyone talks about how amazing the character work is, but I didn't really see that with this novel. I saw it with Locke, the main character, but I didn't necessarily see it with everyone around him. I thought everyone else around him could be described in a couple of words, and the most unique things about them were their bond with Locke, and that really drives the whole story. I think the friendship among all the boys was really well developed, but it doesn't tell me anything about any of their characters. A lot of his crew never rose up above the stereotypes that they embodied or the tropes that they embodied. This is also a heist story. It's about a group of thieves and ne'er-do-wells in this fantasy city trying to pull off a major heist, and I don't really know how to describe it otherwise. I didn't really like the heist. I didn't really love the plot. I do think it came together very nicely in the end with foreshadowing and everything. Scott Lynch clearly has some skill, but even that couldn't get me that invested in the whole book. Maybe upon reread I'll feel differently, but for now, these are my thoughts on Lies of Locke, Lamora. I should love this because so many people who I have similar reading tastes to love this book, and I love really morally great characters. I love heists. I really love Six of Crows, and a lot of people say that this is a lot like Six of Crows but better. I don't personally think they're that much alike, so maybe that's part of it, but this is not it for me. These are some of the books that I should have loved but didn't. Let me know if you have any books like this where you thought you were going to love it because it really fits your reading taste, but it just didn't work for you, and let me know in the comments below, and I will see you next time. Bye.